met someone.
Yeah,
like, hey, how you doing, Jerry?
Yeah, you're that guy. With the internship applications, I mean that's the it's the biggest thing in second year.
I had the narrative was you have to. It's
Oh,
not gonna work.
that's the worst.
And that's when I knew I fumbled that.
Yeah,
You know, 99% of it was horrible. Thankfully, I got one towards the end. You have a really interesting name, Zephyr, Kurt.
Yeah, it's a long one.
Bundy, Hondo.
Zephyr, Kurt, Bundy, Handel. Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. So I mean, Zephyr's a Greek word originally. I mean, I have no Greek heritage, so it doesn't really make much sense. But it's a cool breeze in Greek for whatever reason. And then Kurt, I mean, that comes from Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain.
Who's that? The singer.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's been dead for quite a while. So.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he's good. My parents were a fan.
Okay.
And then Boney's my dad's name, and then Handel's my mum's name. So it's a bit of a mash of all of them.
Oh wow!
It doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, it's really unique though. I feel like that's the kind of name I would, if I'm having a kid someday. That's the kind of name I would want to give my instead of just a generic name like Jerry Jr.
Jerry's a good name. Jerry's a good name.
Yeah, it is. I would want to be more creative.
For sure.
Jerry Jr. or something. Something that gives them more of an identity.
Yeah.
Would you say your name is a big part of your identity of who you feel?
I think so. I mean, I never used to think so, but I think now I'm older, you realise how much people. It sounds so simple. How much people remember you by that name? I mean, I have never met anybody else called Zephyr. None of my friends have met anybody else called Zephyr. So, for them, I am the only Zephyr. I mean, for me, it seems really normal, but I think it has become part of my identity, and it's a good talking point because I'll tell someone my name and they'll say, well, where are you from? Where's your name from? And, like I said, for me, that's just my name. It's normal.
Yeah.
But for other people, that's a really interesting thing. So I mean, it does start a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
So I think it's, even though it can be tricky to spell sometimes, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Did you ever have any problems in high school with teachers trying to pronounce your name?
So many. I still have them now. I still have them now. It's so bad. It's always Zephyr, and it kind of makes sense because the Y towards the end. But my name is not Zephyr. My name is Zephyr, and you think after you've told them 2 or 3 times that that's not my name, you just think I'm just going to put up with it because it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
And it still happens now. Still to this day. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things. There's a part of humor to it, but it's also kind of heartbreaking sometimes, because sometimes I know friends who have just given up where they're just like, just call me whatever, just call me whatever.
Yeah.
Do you have people calling the wrong name? I know a friend who has completely changed his name. His name is one thing.
Yeah.
I forgot exactly what his name is, but his name is an Ethiopian name that has a very specific pronunciation. But in the UK, everyone just butchers the pronunciation to the point where he's changed it completely. When he introduces himself, he's like, my name is this, but his name really actually isn't that.
Oh my God.
It's just to make it more Anglo-Saxon, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it's just one of those things where, because I've experienced that as well. My name, Jerry Tawe Chendi, is like an African name.
Yeah.
And it was just when they were reading out the registers in high school, it's like I'm just waiting for it to get to my name because I know the teacher's gonna be like Jerry Tawachi Chochi, and I'll just be like, oh.
And it's that you can't. What do you even say? Do you say do you go through and tell them exactly how to do it, or do you just leave it? I mean, is it even worth it at that point?
Yeah, that's the question. But I have been trying to be, because I think sometimes I've found myself to be in the wrong as well. Sometimes I reflect on interactions I had, and I recognize that I wasn't as intentional in taking care of people's names. So like today I had a meeting at this company that I'm doing an internship with, just to get some documents and things. And there was this woman who I was meeting. Her name was Leslie Tenkorang.
Okay.
And I didn't obviously mean it in the moment, but looking back, I was like, why did I butcher her name so badly? And she was very graceful about it. She was like, oh, it's fine. We had commonalities as well because we're both from Africa, West Africa. But, it just made me reflect, I got to start actually, putting a bit more effort into people's names as well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
pronouncing the full name, except if they don't want you to, but pronouncing people's full names in making an effort to pronounce it properly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right. It's not even necessarily the intention, because I mean you don't mean to butcher somebody's name, but it can still make somebody feel, I think like I said earlier, if it's part of somebody's identity, that can really, really upset somebody. So I think that's the right thing to do. Just try to, think about, even though I'm not trying to get things wrong, just maybe double checking beforehand. Because I'm terrible with names. I'm so bad with names, and for someone who studies history, that's a really, really bad thing. But any time I meet somebody, I really try to make sure I just say, look, can you repeat your name when I go, because I just think otherwise I'm not going to remember. And then if they remember my name and I meet them again, it just comes across as so rude. But like you said, it's not even the intention. It's just trying to, if you're just trying to be respectful, you're just trying to say their name properly. But if you don't quite remember it right, it never really comes across well. And that's, I always have that problem.
Yeah, and you get put in these uncomfortable situations where you've met someone, they're like, hey, how you doing, Jerry? You're like,
you're that guy. Yeah, no, that happens all the time. And I just think that I'm not trying to be rude, but at the same time, I mean, this is my experience, but you meet so many people in London that just trying to even remember 5 or 6 people is so hard when you're meeting that many people a day. It gets difficult. But I suppose for them, they don't know about the other people. They're just that one person. So making sure every interaction gets it right, such a key thing.
Yeah. But I want to talk a bit about just recently. What have you had going on in terms of, it could be stuff to do with university or business or work. What are some of the things you got going on?
It's been a busy time. It's been a very busy time. I mean, I think the kind of the most key thing would be with the internship applications. I mean, that's it's the biggest thing in second year, trying to get through those. And it's been tough. It's been really tough. I mean, because I'm going for consulting, the standard for anything is high, but for something like consulting, investment banking, government, they're getting thousands of applications for 100 jobs, and it's just crazy. I mean, if that. So initially, I struggled quite a bit. I had a bunch of different tests for these consulting firms. It didn't go that well. I couldn't really get past just the first few stages of testing, and I thought, I mean, there's not really much chance if I can't get past there. And I thought the annoying thing was, I reckon I could do an interview. I just thought, if I can get to that interview stage, I will be fine, because I know about the company, I know about the job, I'm really genuinely interested in the job. But then you just have to pass a maths test, and you think, for somebody who studies history and politics, I'm good at maths, but it's not my natural go-to. So it was a bit of a learning curve. It was lots of long hours in the library doing just really basic maths that I'd just forgotten from years ago. Doing those logical tests, those kind of things. But pushed through all that, and I tried a few different things. So I applied to the Financial Conduct Authority, doing a business change internship. And I got to the interview. Interview was really good, but they just said on the day some other people were better. And you think, I can't really do anything about that. But I interviewed at Sky the day after that, and I got the internship at Sky in the business strategy or commercial strategy team. So I'm starting that in July. Looking forward to that. I think that's probably the main thing recently. But it's just been, it feels nice looking back, knowing that I got the internship, but thinking about the process to get there. They were long days. They were very, weekends. They were long days.
Yeah, I can imagine. How many, do you have a goal in terms of the number of firms that you wanted to apply to?
I think for me, it was more about applying to fewer firms, but putting more effort into each individual application. I mean, the best strategy is to have obviously a balance between quality and quantity. Lots of people will go, I'm going to apply for 100 internships a day. And, it might work, but probably won't work. Whereas for me, I thought, there are 5 or 6 firms I'm really interested in. If I just put a lot of thought into those applications, a lot of time in, then I've got a better chance of getting them. Because, they're not looking for the the guy or girl who's sent the application in last minute and just chat GPT'd it.
Yeah.
They're looking for the person who's gone away and really put that effort in.
Yeah.
It didn't work necessarily. I got rejected by most of them, but I think with Sky, that was one where I really, I really thought about it, researched the company, researched the job, practiced really hard for the interview, and it does pay off. So I think I only applied for about 5 or 6, which is quite maybe a few, maybe about 7 or 8, which is quite a good ratio.
Yeah.
But they do. I mean, even then, those rejections do still feel painful. They do still feel painful when you've done all the work, you've done the test, and they just say, sorry, we're not going to give you an interview.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been. I mean, how's your experience been?
Yeah, that is crazy you say that, because you applied to 7 or 8 and you got 1. I think that's really impressive, because me and people who are applying in terms of the financial industry, I'm applying to, we applied to 10s and 50s and 100s, and I think it got to the point where I gave up. I was like, you know what? I'm probably not gonna get one this year, and then that's when I actually got my internship. So yeah, I applied to, I don't know the exact number, but it's more than 45.
Wow.
Yeah, I applied to so much.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I think maybe I should have gone more with your approach in terms of quality over quantity. Yeah, because I guess for me, I just had this overwhelming sense of almost like a feeling of fear. Like I didn't want to not get an internship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I had all these role models and all these people telling me, like, Jerry, you have to get an internship. If you want to have a chance to break in after you graduate, like, this is so important. You have to. So in my head, the narrative was, you have to. So I guess I just went for as many as possible.
Yeah.
And I did try to put effort in. I wouldn't say it was perfect. Like I had some, I'm sure maybe you had some tests, the logical numerical tests that you might have fumbled. I had some.
I did. Yeah,
I had some where I fumbled, and because with those tests, there's like a threshold, there's a minimum sort of standard you have to get. If you get below that, automatically get rejected. And I think a heartbreaking point for me, I don't know exactly which company it was, but I did the numerical test.
Yeah.
Like 30 minutes later, he sent me an email. Jerry, unfortunately, this is not gonna work.
That's the worst.
And that's when I knew I fumbled that test. I just knew.
Yeah.
But my experience overall, I think it peaked towards the end.
Yeah.
99% of it was horrible rejections. And thankfully I got one towards the end, and we're gonna see how that goes. But yeah, I'm happy you got one at Sky. You said it was consulting,
commercial strategy. So it's I was originally going for consulting, but I thought I should try go a bit broader, just because the consulting ones were their applications were not going well.
Yeah.
So I went a bit broader, just in terms of still within the business field, but not necessarily consulting. So just an internal job. And I suppose there's sort of two sides to consulting. I mean, you have the strategy side and the management side. So the management side is more about processes, business change. So that's why I applied to the job at the FCA, because they were doing an internal business change job.
Yeah.
And then Sky was sort of that other side, the strategy side. So it's within their strategy team. So it means that the bar was slightly lower. It was still, it's still tough. You know what they're like. It's still a tough process, but it just meant that I had a bit more of a chance, and it paid off. So, but the good thing is I can still go from there to consulting. Obviously, it's good, relevant experience. It just means that I think a bit like you mentioned there, the pressure of not having an internship. And I just thought, even if it's not consulting, it needs to be something relevant, because otherwise I'm just screwed in terms of my career. I think that's the problem. The pressure is just so high now. Yeah,
it's really crucial to at least just have your foot in the door.
Yeah.
Because of just how competitive everything is right now. Everything's just super competitive. So for people who have got internships, I'm sure they're super relieved.
Yeah.
For those who haven't as well, I mean, it isn't the end of the world. There's always
absolutely
other things you can do. there's still more internships, even though you could say it's late now, it's
Yeah.
April, but there's still
Yeah.
more internships that are open for applications right now. But yeah, that pressure is real. And you mentioned going into something that wasn't necessarily consulting, but still linked to that business area.
Yeah.
And I think you are quite like a business-minded person. We met at a entrepreneurial business incubator
long
thing.
time ago now.
Yeah, a year or so ago.
God.
And it was nice getting to know you and nice getting to see where your mind was at. You weren't necessarily trying to build your business. I think you were just trying to get inspiration.
Definitely.
About the new venture that you were contemplating on embarking on. Do you want to like talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, for sure.
Like it was a dating app, right?
Yeah. So this was I think you put it really well, that it was less so pursuing that business, more so just trying to flesh out the idea, learn how I could maybe take this to market. But this was it was back in the Christmas break last year, and I was just sitting at home and I was thinking, I'm seeing and hearing all these things about speed dating coming back, and I'm hearing it on the news. I'm seeing it on social media, YouTube. Everybody is doing speed dating.
Yeah.
And I thought that there's got to be a market there for people like us, students at university. And I had a look around. I thought there must be some kind of university-specific speed dating service, because it just seemed like something that young people would really enjoy. Because for us, it's quite a new concept. Obviously, this was going on many years ago with our parents, I imagine. But now for us, it's a totally new concept. So I thought if I could just try and bring that concept to a younger audience, basically students are always looking to try new things, and I thought that was really the market. So did some research, had a look around, looked into different venues I could go for. And no one was really doing this. I found maybe one or two, but they were basically just out of business. So I thought the market's pretty open. The concept is really popular. I just need to focus on how I can market this to the right kind of people. Because the current market was slightly older. We're talking 24 years plus. But I thought it's such a good concept that I could just bring it down to that, I suppose, 18 to maybe 22 range.
Yeah.
But then I think you're right with what you said, that it was really just those initial stages. I didn't really get past there. So yeah, through that incubator process, I think I learned more that it maybe wasn't the business for me. I think the concept was great. It could have worked. I think my pitch was okay. But I just think the passion wasn't there, and I think that's the key thing. So I know for you with your business, you really care about that. You're really passionate about that.
Yeah.
And for my last business, I was really passionate, but with this, I just thought it's more that I found the gap in the market, not that I actually love this product. And I just had to leave it there, because I thought otherwise I'm going to spend loads of time doing this and just think I'm not really feeling like I'm achieving anything. That was the problem, really.
Yeah. I think you talking about that, it makes me think about a quote I heard yesterday or today, like a very powerful question that I read somewhere that said, do you feel successful, or are you just being busy?
Yeah.
And it's that idea of like,
definitely.
This sounds like a great idea, but if your heart isn't in it, then you just end up feeling busy, but
100%.
you're not successful in the sense that you're not getting something out of this. And obviously it's never over. You never know. Maybe you might spark another passion in the future. But I think it was very open-minded and brave of you just to step into that area and do something like that in the field of dating, which can be a bit taboo as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. What inspired you to go into dating, or was it like you got into a heartbreak? Like, oh man, I need to find a rebound or something.
Oh, I don't know how much I can tell you here. not to the public. No, I think it was more just that I like I said, I was seeing this on social media, hearing about this on the news, etc. And I think it was I just saw that gap, and I thought, even though it wasn't really, I maybe at the time I probably would have enjoyed that kind of service, but it was more just that I thought there's a good business that can run here and it's not being run, so someone has to step in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. I think because I lacked that personal story, that's always been really key. At least in my sort of thinking about business, having that personal story, that personal reason. Because it's very easy just to say, here's a gap in the market, let me go and run with this. But then I think, like you said, you're just busy, you're not necessarily successful because you don't feel fulfilled. You're just doing something because nobody else is. I think the key really is just to make sure that passion is there, that drive is there.
Yeah, and I'm quite intrigued as well because that mindset of you saying that, there was a gap in the market and you felt a need almost to fill that gap. Where does that mindset come from? Because it might seem very intuitive and straightforward to you, but for most people, at least our age, I don't think most people have that mentality to see beyond and be like, you know what, I can see things changing, I can see there's a gap there, I can see there's a gap there, how can I exploit that? So where did that mindset come from?
That's such a good question. I suppose you mentioned in your question there, it really is just intuition for me that I mean, I haven't really even reflected on that because you're right, it's just, it almost comes naturally. But I mean, I think, this is not the greatest answer, but I think I am just a natural problem solver. So when I see something like that, so for example, a gap in the market, my initial thought is, well, okay, it's not that's a shame. It's, well, what can we do about this? What can go in that gap? And I think, I mean, it could come from my parents. I mean, my mum's in business, my dad's he teaches economics, so I think that mindset is just always genetically embedded in me. But it is a difficult question because I mean, for me that just feels so natural. If something is broken, fix it. That kind of mindset. But I think it must be from my upbringing, growing up in an entrepreneurial household. I mean, my brother, he was always selling shoes, selling clothes, and that's how I got into my first business. So I think just being in that environment where people were spotting gaps, taking risks, trying to do things differently, I think that was probably what did it for me. Just living in a house where people were constantly going, well, something's wrong here. How can we go into that gap? So I think but now definitely it's become intuitive.
Yeah. And you mentioned from a young age your brother selling shoes and selling things and how that rubbed off on you. I think that's really true because this sounds really insane because it's like, I don't think anyone would think of it because when you're in school, you don't think to sell stationery to your own school. Like, where did that come from? Because usually people would think to sell sweets or things like that.
I mean, that was a really, really random thing. So it was actually, it's actually somebody else's idea. I know that makes me seem really like I didn't do anything, but it was actually a teacher came to us one day and said, you guys seem like you know a few things about business. It's me and a bunch of friends, and he goes, well, we have a load of stationery that we just need to get rid of, basically. We're not using it in class, so why don't you guys just go and set up an equipment shop? I just thought, let's do it. And from that point onwards, it was just us doing it. So I mean, the idea initially was from him, but after that, I mean, we had to do all the marketing, we had to work out all the prices, do the inventory, actually run the shop as well, which was chaotic at times because we were in the canteen. So you've got hundreds of kids coming past, and you've got to try and get a bit of money out of them. And it was good fun. I think it was a good lesson in doing in-person sales because most of my business experience has been e-commerce, which is great. But the one thing you miss about that is actually talking to the customer, understanding their wants and needs, and then really building that relationship. So I really liked it in that sense because we got to physically deal with the customer, work out where we could do better, how to serve them properly. I think that was really important because I did struggle sometimes with when I was doing e-commerce that I can't actually see the impact this is having on the customer, and you get the feedback, you get the reviews, but it's not the same as having that smile on the face when even if it's something as simple as you sold them a pen, that's gonna make their day. They're not going to get a detention for not having a pen. So I think that was a really interesting one because, like I said, it was not our idea initially, but once we had the brief, we just ran with it, and we went for about 9 months. So it's a pretty interesting little thing.
Is it something that carried on after you left, or?
So I think so we handed it over to a few people in the year below us, But I'm not sure if I actually need to check in and see if they carried on. But I hope so, because I mean, we weren't a massive business, just a little school business, but we were doing okay. I mean, we were making profit on every item we sold. We were selling a decent amount every day, and we managed to get quite a few more people involved. So obviously we weren't paid, so it was free labour basically. No,
The money was just going to the school.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know where the money went to, but it just sort of disappeared. So yeah, we got no money from that, but it was only, break time, 10, 15 minutes a day. So it wasn't too bad. And by the end of the year, we had about, 6 people on board, so we could rotate different break times. Yeah. But yeah, we did not get any money from that.
Wow. That's an amazing story though. I think I can relate, not just because I don't think I've done something similar, not in the sense of stationery. I used to just sell, me and my friend, we used to just sell cookies and cupcakes. We would go to the cheapest shop near school, get some cookies for like 50p and sell it for like £2. And, so I can relate in that sense of, finding that gap and trying to exploit it. But also because like it was such a young age, this was sixth form or high
so
school?
this was just in year 12, so I would have been, 17, 16, 17? Yeah.
Wow. And did you guys get some sort of award recognition for it or anything?
I don't think we got anything. We might have got a certificate or something, but I think it was really, ever since from when they gave us the brief, it was really hands off. So, I mean, even in the sense of, once we finished, they just kind of said, well, you're passing this over, then we're done there. So it's, it was an interesting thing. It was a really interesting little sort of micro business to be running inside the school. And the best thing was, because they told us we could do it, we wouldn't get shut down. Because that's always the thing. I mean, I've known lots of people similar to what you were saying who would very entrepreneurially, go and buy cookies and cakes and sell them. As soon as the school finds out, you're done. I mean, of course, rules apply, so it makes sense. But that was the great thing about that little business.
Yeah. And do you remember? I mean, I don't know if you can talk about it, but do you remember any numbers in terms of what you guys were pulling in daily? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it was very small. Very small numbers. I can't remember specifics, but it was very. I mean, we get a good amount of footfall, so I imagine the canteen could hold a good maybe 100-200 people. So even if we get 10% of that coming past, that's decent. If you're just selling them a few pence. Some days we did better than others. I mean, on a few days we tried to do a bit of a different, I suppose, sales strategy. So we knew that lots of people would be in the library as well during break time. So we went there and we just said, do you guys need any pens, pencils, pencil cases? And much to our surprise, they did. And it felt a bit strange doing that more direct selling, actually going straight to the customer. But I think it's a good experience. I think you need to, sort of in general terms, need to learn how to communicate in those more intimate situations with the customer. I mean, it's one thing to be in person, sort of behind the barrier speaking to them. When you're actually going out and finding them and trying to drive that sale, that's a totally different world.
Yeah. Would you say, and I do agree with you in a sense that transition is a different world. And in terms of that, would you say that was like a hard transition for you, or have you always been sort of outgoing, extroverted?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I think personally, and I suppose in a social sense, I'm definitely very outgoing, extroverted kind of person. So I think for me it seemed natural. It seemed normal to do that. I think the challenge was, because we had quite a diverse team, trying to make sure everyone on the team was on board with that and it wasn't putting anybody out of their comfort zone. Because that's a really important thing as well. When we're doing this every day, working together every day, we've got to make sure we're catering to the needs of the team as well as the customers. Otherwise, the whole business falls apart. But I think for me it was very normal. Because from a young age I've worked at my mother's business, and that's very. I mean, it's on a market basis, so there is still a bit of separation, but it's that direct sale to the customer. If somebody walks past, you're trying to get them interested in the product. So I think I learned to do that leading a bit rather than just waiting for them to come, just trying to find them and say, well, I have this product. I think you might have this need. How can we work together? But I think it was still a bit of a transition. because there's a degree of security when you're waiting for the customer to come to you, and you can just sit there and do nothing really until they turn up, and then you have to start worrying about driving the sale.
Yeah.
But it is a different world when you're out there trying to actually find the person and work out what they need there and then. So I think almost a double-ended answer there, that definitely naturally I'm very outgoing, but still it was different to what I've been doing otherwise.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And also because from your experiences, from the things I've seen that you've done, it seems like your overarching passion or your overarching pursuit is just sales. It seems like you don't necessarily, it doesn't matter too much what you're selling,
Yeah.
as long as you're selling. And I was quite, shocked when I saw the wide range of experiences you've done, not just the stationery, but in the bakery as well,
Yeah.
and e-commerce. So it led me to think like, oh, this isn't just about stationery, or it's not about bread.
Yeah.
It's not about the clothes. It's about the art of selling. In a sense.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I guess leading on to that, I want to ask: are there any tactics that maybe you've learned when it comes to selling? Any little things when it comes to face selling?
It's a good question. I think the key is always the customer, and I know that sounds really stupid and really basic, but people in business and people just in jobs in general, just forget about the customer. And it's easy to focus so much on making the best product, doing the best advertising, but if you're not actually addressing the wants and needs of the customer, the product will never sell. And that's always been my key thing. So, I mean, particularly when I was doing the in-person sales to the bakery, the key was really to understand exactly what the customer wants, and it was a very personal thing. We knew the customers, they were return buyers, so you knew where to direct them to.
Yeah.
And that is the key, just understanding what your customer actually wants and needs, and how to communicate that message. Because, I don't know, for example, if we had an older demographic, there's no point putting ads on TikTok saying, go and buy our bread, because nobody from the right demographic is seeing that. And it's very easy to get sidetracked in just putting loads of money or time into marketing campaigns that are just not reaching the right people. So I think my philosophy, just for business in general, is always start with that customer, because that's where business is built from. Yeah. It's not built from the product and then we find somebody for it. It's, well, what problem am I solving? But who am I solving that problem for? That's always been the key for me.
Yeah. And what inspired you to get involved with the bakery as well, Greenfield Bakery?
Greenfield Bakers, shout out to my mum. Yeah, so that was, I think for me, I was very young. I just wanted to get some experience, and it was very accessible because she's my mum. So it was really easy just for her to take me to the market and then show me how to do things. And I think it was just that, and also I just wanted to help out really. I mean, it's a small business. It's a one lady operation, just my mum doing it. So it's nice to pitch in as and where I can. And I think it's a really good learning process, because like you touched on there, my experience has been just doing sales, but not necessarily one type of product. So I think that bakery was great in the sense of, I mean, I like bread, but it's not kind of my biggest passion.
Yeah.
But just learning to sell something that maybe doesn't make you tick, isn't that one thing you really care about, is really important. Yeah. Because in many aspects of your career or university, you're going to have to do things which maybe you don't enjoy that much, but you have to do them well at the same time. I mean, I grew to love bread, but initially it wasn't that I had this sudden passion for bread and I had to sell it. It was more just, I wanted the experience, wanted to help out, and also just learn a few things about selling things that maybe I didn't even create, I'm not even that passionate about. I think it's a really good skill.
Yeah, it definitely is a good skill. I was reading a book recently by, who was it by? Chris Voss, I think. And it's called Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
And so Chris Voss is basically an ex-FBI international negotiator.
Okay, yeah.
He negotiated with the most dangerous terrorists and everything all across the world. And the whole premise of the book was him just giving these actionable techniques and advice on how to negotiate in all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And basically, what he was arguing was that in the current world, the way people approach negotiation, it's like a 50-50 game. Like,
Yeah.
let's meet
Yeah.
in the middle, let's be nice, let's be moderate, let's try and come to a compromise. But his definition of negotiation, his basically his ideology, what has worked the best for him was going for what you want and not compromising.
Yeah.
Obviously doing it in a mature, in a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
way, in a kind way, but not relenting and sort of using certain tactics to get what you want and not just trying to settle,
Yeah.
actually trying to win. And I think that's something that links a lot to sales. And like you said, sales is important in all different aspects
Yeah.
of life as well. And I'm also really interested, you had the stationery business, you had a bakery business, and what caused you to want to transition into e-commerce, which was clothing?
Yeah. So I mean, I think, like I mentioned earlier, it was really my brother. So my brother was selling clothes. Supreme. He sold lots of Supreme back in the day. All of those.
Supreme needs to be trending. He's so big.
Yeah.
Like the bags, everything.
Yeah. It was honestly, it was so cool back in the day, and he loved all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, was it jealousy, was it competition? It's probably competition, because I've always been very competitive. I think I just wanted to try and get into that as well, because I thought if he can do it, then I can do it better. And he was very good. So I started off in the same way. So I started by selling a few bits of Supreme. I wasn't great at it, because you have to be there when it drops. You have to sort of run out of your lesson. This was when I was back in school, and I remember telling my teacher, "Oh, can I go to the toilet?" And then I don't know who told him. Somebody told him I was in the toilet buying Supreme. I got in a lot of trouble for that. A lot of trouble. And that was the problem. You can't really, 11 o'clock, whatever it was, you can't really be there on the dot buying things. So I thought I needed something a bit more sustainable that I could actually do.
Yeah.
And I think so building on that, it was just, I'd been selling my own clothes, just my old second-hand things, just to get rid of them in general. So I already knew how to use the platforms. I thought, hang on, if I put two and two together here, if I'm selling this Supreme stuff that's not really working, but I know how to sell my own stuff, why don't I just go into second-hand? Because clearly there's a market for it. And I thought, well, the big problem is, where do I actually get the stock from? Because I'm going to run out of clothes at some point. And of course, that's not really business, that's more personal.
Yeah.
But so I moved on from there, and I did, I purchased individual items. So I took a long time just trawling through Depop, eBay, finding things that I thought were good quality, but at a reasonable price. I mean, some people charge crazy stuff on there. So it was pretty difficult. And I started off just doing North Face jackets. That was the main thing. North Face, Ralph Lauren jumpers.
Yeah.
And it was good initially. It was much slower than it was in the later stages, but I think it was just good to try out. And I think that initial success really pushed me on. But I think, the main influence would be probably my brother, and I think I wanted just to try and compete with him. But I'd say that was it.
Yeah. In terms of the growth as well, when you started, selling these products, when was the transition where it went from, oh, this is just something I'm trying out, just something I'm initially doing, to when you started seeing more customers, more orders, more following? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I think it was funny. I think it was probably during the pandemic, actually. So for the first, I think it must have been about a year and a half or so before, maybe about a year before that, things were picking up, but they weren't crazy. I mean, I was still in school, so I didn't have that much time to try and balance it with my studies. But then when the pandemic came, I thought, I have all this time. I have these online lessons, but I mean, once they're done, I've got the whole day to do whatever I want to. So that's where things are a lot more serious. And I moved away from doing that, just buying individual items and selling them on, because that worked, but it's really, really time consuming. You'd sit there for hours and you'd find one or two things and you think that's going to bring me in maybe, I don't know, £20-30 profit. That's just not worth it for a few hours.
Yeah.
Whereas I thought, if I can just find a supplier, then it cuts out all of that time and I can make a lot more money. So it was tricky trying to find a good supplier. The first the first company I partnered with I think they were okay, but they were at a slightly lower price point, which is all I could afford at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was the quality did reflect the price point. So I got the first batch of clothes. It must have cost me, I don't know, £200-300 for that box. Open it up and I just think this stuff is not going to sell. It's not going to sell. I mean, some of it sold, lots of it didn't, but I just thought this is the leftovers. And I paid all this money, and it was a tiny business, and that was quite a lot. There's a month of earnings or so. Yeah. So I thought after that, I need to try and find a better supplier, and that was tricky. But I found a different person. They were really good. We got a really good relationship going, and then it was strange actually. The reason why I could afford to buy his stuff is because my bike got stolen. And with the insurance money, I had enough to put together with the business money to afford to switch to this new supplier. Okay. Got the first box. It was so much better. I mean, it was much cheaper. I think the first one I was paying about £7 or £8 per unit. This person, £4.50 per unit. I'm looking at really good, decent quality stuff, and I thought, I'm just set now. Yeah. And after that, I'd say that was when the growth really came in. Just worked on that relationship with this supplier. It's very good to me. And we just grew from there. And I tried to jump on a few trends. So a few years ago when quarter zips were becoming really big, I thought I've got to buy those. Yeah. And they were so expensive to buy compared to everything else. But I thought I just need them because you could buy them for maybe, I don't know, £10 to £15 a piece, and you could sell them for £45 each. Yeah. And if you can do that on scale, you're bringing in huge margins. And that was the key. I jumped on those trends during the pandemic. For some reason, everyone was buying clothes, and it just started growing from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I want to know, because remember you met me at the gym. I was training with someone, and I was introducing you to them and talking about how they want to get into e-commerce and things like that. So I want to know. I want to know your whole rules and your tactics and sort of all your secrets in terms of.
Can't tell you all my secrets.
I mean, you have to tell me all. The good ones in terms of someone wants to start with an e-commerce business. Sometimes it can be tricky, like you said, finding a supplier. You using the correct platforms and things like that. What set of steps, is there a hierarchy in where you need to go, or how do you go about with that?
That's a really good question. I think you're right. It is really daunting. I mean, with any business, I'm sure you felt this when you started your business. It's one thing to think of the idea, but it's really hard to actually just jump on it and go for it. Yeah. I think the main thing is just be flexible, because when I came in, I had no idea that in a few years' time, I would be selling a very specific type of product to a very specific customer, and it would be working. My idea initially was simply, I've got a bunch of clothes, I'm going to sell them, hopefully more people buy them. I think that's really the key, that no matter how well you plan, it will never go to plan in business. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't plan. You should have a clear plan in place, but just be flexible. Because when I first set up, I had these forecasts, I had these marketing plans. A few months down the line, the forecasts were completely wrong. Marketing plans weren't working, and you just have to remain flexible and go, hang on, let's try something else. Yeah. And I think the key to that, like I mentioned earlier, is just understand your customer, because ultimately the customer's wants and needs are going to change. And if you don't understand that customer, then you're not going to be flexible. You're going to be stuck doing one thing which you thought was good 2 months ago. But if you don't have a good maybe line of communication, whether that's through feedback or messages with your customer, if you're seeing them in person, you're just not going to understand their different wants and needs. So I think that's the key. Do plan when you start off. It's really helpful to have forecasts, planning, just things about marketing that can help you put you on the right track. But also be flexible, because your customer will change, and you have to understand that customer. Okay. Otherwise, that change is going to outpace your flexibility. And I think that's really the key.
What are some of the ways you get that connection, that intimacy with your customer? Was it through TikTok, Instagram?
Yeah, that was I think like I mentioned earlier, that was the hardest problem. I mean, with e-commerce generally, just actually being able to talk to your customer directly. I think exactly those methods. So I was on TikTok. I was trying to do sort of funny videos related to clothes, and it'd be something like, Just short sketches or skits. And during that, I'd be wearing the different items, and then there'd be links in the bottom saying, "Oh, you can buy this item." And that was more just to reach out and say, you know, I'm a regular guy. I'm probably only a few years younger than you, and I just want to do good stuff and sell good clothes to you. I think lots of times customers just see the product, they see the buy button, they don't see the story or the person. So I think absolutely social media was really vital, and it was difficult, really difficult as well, trying to find out exactly what would reach the customer, what they would like. And I think that the key was just using different channels. So I was using TikTok, I was using Instagram. My business was mainly running on Depop, so direct messaging on there, just saying, "Oh, you've liked this item, are you interested?" And then once, if they buy the item, just following up, saying, "Well, how was that?" So I think the best thing to do is, again, try to think about what your customer wants and how they want to see it. And it is hard, and you have to do trial and error. I mean, I tried lots of different things; they didn't really work. But that's the key to maintaining that communication, working out the most effective way to reach them, and then just doing it. Because once you know, it's dead easy. You just do what they want you to do. But it was challenging building that relationship. But I think social media and then just good customer service was the key, because that's what kept people coming back, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the social media point, there's an obsession. Even I've fallen into this obsession of trying to figure out what the algorithm is. And like, what can I do? What's the algorithm? How many times a day? Shall I post at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. on Sunday or on Monday? Well, did you fall into that trap?
Oh, I did.
Well?
Yeah.
How did you get out of that, or was it something you just had to manage?
I fell so deep into that trap. I'd be sitting there at 6 p.m. on a Sunday, ready to press the post button, thinking, "This is going to be my big post." And it never was. It never was, because I mean, I don't understand the algorithm. I imagine it changes a lot. I think it's important, definitely, to consider those things, because you can make the best video in the world, but if you post at the wrong time, there is a chance, because of the algorithm, you might not reach the right people. But I think you have to work on getting the best video first. So the key is, at least in my experience, was not to start by thinking about, when should I post, which keywords can I use to gain the algorithm. The key was simply just make good content, and then the other stuff is extracurricular, basically. Just thinking about, how can I make this look good? What do people want to see? And then I can think about, well, when do they want to see it? What does the algorithm want? But I think it's really important to do those things, especially when social media is the backbone of so many businesses now. I just think the key thing is to make the good content first, because we see, I mean, I'm sure you see this as well on social media, just dreadful content, whether that's from people or businesses, and you just think, you've made that and you've posted that, and it's just not any good. And the key is, start with the good content, and then think about, well, how will the algorithm respond to this? That's the key.
I think there's this guy, he's a social media influencer. He's quite successful with social media and getting brand deals and things. So he created a separate social media TikTok page just to talk about the ups and downs and giving people tips on how to make money from social media and capitalize from brand deals and things. And he was talking about one specific situation where Costco wanted him to help them with their marketing strategy and how to post on TikTok. And so usually what happens is a brand will reach out to him. His name is Moyo. And they'll be like, "Hey Moyo, can you help us, redesign our TikTok page, give us advice on what to post?" And he would look through their page and everything. But the thing with Costco, he went onto their page and he was just so disappointed. He was like, what is this? What is this? He basically just he gave them a lot of constructive criticism. But he was just very, the page was just very bland. All the posts were just not going anywhere. And when he made a video about the whole situation, and so I was interested. I went to click on the Costco TikTok page, and they had deleted all their videos. So I was like, okay, this guy must be onto something. But I think that element of like you said, some social media posts are just dreadful. Because in reality, when it comes to the big companies, sometimes the people behind the wheel are out of touch.
Absolutely.
They might be super old men and women, from a different generation who haven't either they haven't taken the time to learn how things work
Yeah.
in the modern times, or they're just completely out of touch, and they're not willing to accept it, which I guess is there's two sides to it. But also relating to your business adventures as well, I was I was wondering if you had to redo it all again today,
Yeah.
especially with AI. I think AI.
Yeah.
I was doing this for this podcast, how I set up the setting and everything.
Yeah.
The one I did in one of the other episodes in the kitchen, I took a picture of my kitchen
Yeah.
on ChatGPT, and I was like, give me a suggestion on how to set up a podcast in this kitchen.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And
That's
it
brilliant.
redesigned my kitchen
Yeah.
with a really realistic looking animation, told me exactly where to put the chairs, told me exactly where to put everything. So
Yeah.
AI is super massive.
Yeah.
So if you had to redo everything again with what we have now, AI, social media, all these different tools, would you do it differently?
That's an amazing question. I think you touched on a really important thing there. I mean, AI is changing everything, whether it's business or your kitchen. I mean, AI is really changing the world.
Yeah.
I think it would probably play most into my marketing would be the main thing.
Okay.
And I think it would just really increase the efficiency. Yeah. So for me, I had to obviously had to manually take the pictures of the items, and then I had a bunch of different editing softwares, whether it was for videos or photos. I had to manually go into those, choose different backgrounds, effects, cut out backgrounds and things like that. And I think now I could just say to AI, ChatGPT or DeepSeek, something like that, and just go, I want to have a colourful background on this jumper, just do it. And it would go away and do it. And I think when I was running that business, I'm sure those tools were around, but they were nothing like they are now. Mm-hmm. So I think, if I went back, it would just be with the marketing to increase efficiency, focusing on using those AI prompts, because I think, like your example shows there, it's good. It is. I mean, it's not perfect, but it is definitely good.
Yeah.
And I think when I was, for me, because I was posting loads of pictures of jumpers, T-shirts, it's really simple stuff, and AI could have easily cut the backgrounds, put new backgrounds in, animated different things. So I think AI would have really changed the nature of my marketing. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a bit, I feel like we've touched on a lot of things when it comes to, the different business ventures you've got involved in, and, the different skills you've picked up, your passion for sales.
Yeah.
And, different changes you've endured from, high school till now. I want to talk a bit, because I realize you're quite into politics and things like that. I want to talk about politics, nothing contentious.
I don't
want to go on a run and be like, but I do want to talk a bit about politics, your ideas, and, we can have a debate or whatever. Politics. Today, I think ever since the inauguration of who.
I don't even need to say the name.
Politics has been a hot topic, even for people who are apolitical.
Yeah.
I feel like it's impossible to be apolitical now.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Because everything affects everyone.
Yeah.
And it's one of those times where, even though some people might be left swinging or right swinging, it's super confusing, because everything is just discombobulated and coming together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've never been someone to be, rigidly on one side or the other side. I guess each side have their arguments. In the UK, there's the conservative side. There's the left wing side, and you're more like a conservative supporter, right?
Yeah, for sure.
How did you get into that? Was it maybe your family?
So it's an interesting one, because I mean my family are not. I mean, they're interested in politics, but they're not sort of, I think, like what you're saying, they're not hard this or hard that. It's more pragmatic. I think it was probably still where I grew up, just not my immediate family. So I grew up in around Boston, Skegness area. It's one of the safest conservative seats in the country. I mean, it's recently gone to reform now.
Okay.
But for something like 80 years, it was conservative. So lots of my friends, even if they weren't interested in politics, their parents were probably conservative. So I imagine those views and ideals rubbed off on them. And I think it was really from towards the end of school, when I started studying politics for my A-level, I started to think about these kinds of things. I mean, I'd always been interested in politics. My family had always discussed those kinds of topics. Like I said, less ideologically, more just in terms of interest. So it wasn't new to me, but it was, what was new to me was deciding where I sit in all of that. And I think it was, for me, it was the values of conservatism, I think, align best with me. I think tradition is really important. Family is really important for me, especially in my culture. So I think I just aligned with the values, and I wanted to try and see where that would take me. So I joined the party. I got involved with a few local things, and it was interesting. It was good being able just to explore that at a young age, because it's very difficult these days. Lots of people find it very tricky to talk about their politics because they think they'll be judged, they'll be called stupid or ideological. Yeah. And I think it was nice being just in that environment, in that politics class, where I could say, this is what I think, this is who I think I align with. And it was just a good safe space. So I think for me it would have been probably inadvertently values of other people rubbing off on me. But then when I got a chance to actually explore politics, look into those different ideologies, I just think the natural fit for me was conservatism. I think the other ideologies didn't really match what I was looking for, I don't think.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned on there's an inflammatory effect when you talk about politics. Yeah. It's almost like people are quick to jump on you and just try to fight you. When I feel like two people can disagree fiercely but still be very civil about it, But I think in politics it becomes really wild, where it's like, oh, you're this, you're that, you're this. Where we just have to realize at the end of the day we're all human beings. Just because you support one side and the other side doesn't mean you're all of a sudden super horrible. And I know there are these trigger words, or these definitions of different parties that are really outdated. So, which is why I'm interested in asking you, what do you think about when people have these inflammatory or incendiary definitions of the Conservative Party? Like, they might say, oh, conservatives are outdated or whatever. Like, what do you think when you hear stuff like that?
It's a really good question. It makes me sad. It makes me sad, and it's not just when it's. Obviously, it makes it sad when it's about me, but when it's about other people, when it's about the Labour Party or whoever else, I think everybody's entitled to their views, and I think obviously there are things like hate speech, which obviously are not good. I'm not advocating that, but everybody's entitled to have a view and an opinion, and they should be allowed to express that, so long as it's, of course, sensible and legally acceptable. And I think it is really sad when somebody's entire identity, if that's what it is for them, and their viewpoints are just shut down purely because of a word. And I think that we see a lot of this now, and especially with my involvement with the Conservative Society at Queen Mary. Lots of people, when we're doing the freshers' fairs, will come up and just sort of poke fun at you, and you just think, well, this is just my ideas. This is not who I am. This is just what I think. And I think the problem is people don't really move past that label of, like you're saying, you're outdated or a conservative. I think it takes a real understanding of these different ideologies to engage in, like you said, in a fiery debate, but in a proper way, in a sensible way, rather than just saying, well, you're associated with this group of people, so I don't like you. I just think it's really sad how divided politics has become, that there's so much resentment from either side towards each other, that simply by being associated with one particular name or party, you are seen as a certain type of person. I've had people I've spoken to in the past where they've just said, I'm sorry, you're a conservative, I can't speak to you. I've been talking to girls in the past and they've said, I'm sorry, you're a conservative.
What?
And I just thought, I haven't changed, I'm still me. That's just my political views. And I just think that's really strange. I'm sure it goes the other way. I'm sure that happens with Labour supporters, Reform supporters, Liberal Democrat supporters. And I just think it's really sad that people... I see this now in my daily life when I'm running the society, well, co-running as treasurer of the society, that lots of people are scared to come forwards and say, I want to join the society. I have to really work with them and try and find a safe space for them to tell me that, because they're so worried that if they say, publicly that they're conservative, their friends will not talk to them. I just think that's so sad. I mean, it's not even limited, like I said, to conservatism. It's more broadly in politics that it's become so divided and almost factional that people will simply not even interact with somebody because they have different views. And I just think it's such a shame.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think is the cause of that? Because for as long as I can remember, I think politics has for a long time always been that way.
Yeah.
Like I can think back just, recently, 50, 60 years or more ago, like the Cold War was basically something similar, just two sides being like, oh, I'm better, my politics are better. The other side's like, oh no, my politics are better, my politics are better. Like, why can't they both just be themselves and not have to like try to overcome each other? So what do you think is causing that like tribalistic mindset in politics?
I suppose that's on the macro level. I think on the more micro level, in day-to-day interactions I might have with somebody, I think it's populism. I think it's now that, I mean, populism is not necessarily new, but that we have leaders who develop support bases in a certain way that makes people crowd around them almost in a cult-like manner. And I think because of that, people become so bound to their own ideology that it's like a football game. I mean, if you say you're an Arsenal fan, if I say I'm a Chelsea fan, that could be a big deal for some people. Not saying you're an Arsenal fan, but
can never.
No, me neither. But I think that's the problem. I think because leaders are positioning themselves as populist and they're developing these cult-like followings, that people are becoming so attached to their ideologies and ideas, maybe without properly understanding them in some cases, because these populist leaders are very, very convincing. I mean, we see many of them around, but sometimes when you dig into the policies, it doesn't really make that much sense. And I think that's the problem, that these people they're great, they're great public speakers. They're very, very compelling. And it's easy to get locked in to those kinds of people. I think that's the problem. If you have one person like that on one side, one on the other side, and you have those cult-like followings developing, you just get, on the micro level, people really not getting along. I think in the same way as really die-hard football fans, that some people who support one team might not talk to someone who supports another team because they're so obsessed with that particular institution. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah. Definitely, and I think it's very silly, but I guess it comes from passion and wanting to have some meaning in your life and things like that. And that idea of populism, it makes me think a lot to I think it's from the same book I told you I was reading by Chris Voss. There's this term, I forgot what it's called. I'll probably put it on the screen somewhere, but it's this term that basically defines the phenomenon where people are drawn towards spectacles, people are drawn towards things that feel good, towards things that exaggerate, towards things that show emotion, even when those things can be very fickle and very, very superficial. And I think that's what we're seeing in politics, where as long as you are able to put on a face of like, something that is convincing, have a big slogan and, be like, we're going to do this and this and that person is evil, I'm good, this is that. I think with the recent, even way before the pandemic, people have been looking for something to grab onto, cost of living, all these different crises are going up and people are just looking for something that they can hold on to. And I think there's like a gap in the politics market where, politicians are trying to grab onto it by putting out these narratives that are really addictive and very captivating, but can sometimes lack depth. And I don't know if there's a conclusion for it, which is why I've never been Labour or Conservative or things like that. But I think over the past year or so is when I've started researching a little bit more, learning a bit more about the different things that the different parties, their different policies when it comes to education, when it comes to youth. But I think I'm still in that camp of most people our age who aren't really that interested in politics. Yeah. Would you say you've always been interested in politics from a super young age or just recently?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think probably yes. I'll say why. I think so. In my house, like I mentioned earlier, politics was always a topic of discussion. I mean, from a very non-ideological perspective, but it was always, we always have the radio on. We still do always have the news on. We watch the news as well. Politics was just a really key thing in our household. And I think just growing up in that environment where, you come in year 6 at the dinner table and you'd be discussing what's happening in the news today. And at the time, it just feels so normal. You're just talking to your parents about this politician has done this or this. But you look back a few years later and you think those conversations were really crucial in developing my thinking about current affairs and then where these things have come from, who the different parties are. And I think as long as I can remember, we were having those conversations. And I think, I would say from a young age, politics was always something that really, really drew me. I mean, whether or not that will translate into a career in politics is a different question. But I think in terms of just politics in general, I think from a young age, that was always something that was front and centre of my thinking, definitely.
Yeah. I think sales has a very strong tie into politics as well. Do you ever see yourself going into there at all?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, so before I came to university, politics was the goal. That was definitely the goal. I was thinking civil service or going down the parliamentary route, working my way up that way. But I just remembered. I never really forgot, but it just came back to my mind that I just love business. I really love business, and I want to, at least for now, try to explore that route just in a different way, because it's been, at least in my experience, it's been on a very small scale, running my own things, helping small businesses. Whereas I mean, I'm not from London. I mean, now being in London, I've got all the big businesses around me, the banks, everything, and I can get that experience. But I think you're right. There is a really strong connection between the two, and I suppose between the business world more broadly. So I don't think politics is off the cards in terms of a career, but I think for now I just want to see where that business, that consulting route takes me, definitely.
And what would you say maybe is the cause of people our age not being interested in politics at all?
That's a great question. I think it's interesting because I think some of the things you touched on earlier, like the cost of living crisis, the pandemic, these are things that made lots of people interested in politics, but also in a way they stop some people being interested because they have so many other things to think about. I mean, if you're struggling to pay the bills, you may struggle through the pandemic, now the tariffs have come in, even more financial pressures. Some people genuinely just have no time to think about politics. I mean, they're thinking about their caring responsibilities, keeping the lights on. I think that's a real challenge. So I suppose there are two paths there. Either that pushes some people to go, hang on, I want to change this. But sometimes it's really hard to do that when you think, how can I even start to think about the cause of this problem and how to solve it if I can't even afford to pay the bills? I think that's a really, really big challenge. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that is so true. People just have more pressing issues on their hands than to think about, what's going on in these political realms that they can't really influence, because they feel like there's they form such a tiny piece of the puzzle that their voices don't really matter that much, and it's sad that it has come to that.
Definitely.
But especially with what's going on recently as well, with the tariff war and the uncertainty, you just don't know where it's gonna go.
Yeah,
it's most likely gonna get really bad before it gets really good. I think in these next few years or something, we're gonna see like a huge turn in the tide. You know how before it was all about America is the superpower.
Yes.
That's where all the big deals go on. The big companies are headquartered there and everything. I think China is really coming up, to be honest. Because I know before it was all about companies like Tesla and things, but China have for I think for a lot of the big industry hitters in America, China probably has a better firm that they're bringing up. So for example, I can think of Tesla. Tesla has been seen as like a pioneer in when it comes to green energy and things like that. But recently, China have BYD.
BYD,
which is also probably just as big. Not doesn't have the same controversies as Tesla, which
Yeah.
is a positive as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just see China coming out. I don't want to say on top because I don't want to see it like a fight. It shouldn't be a
for
fight.
sure.
But
Yeah.
overall, I see China, you know, changing the narrative of the world. And yeah, it's just a time, it's so much uncertainty, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, you just got to try your best. Like I was talking to you earlier about investing in things. Like I started investing recently. My uncle, thank God for my uncle, he really explicitly advised me to diversify my portfolio. Because before I was just S&P 500. Everything's on S&P 500.
Yeah.
But what has happened in the S&P 500 ever since 2025? I think it's endured the largest, you know, fall in value for like how many years now? And I'm so glad I took his advice. You know, with the uncertainty, you just don't know what's gonna happen. And
Absolutely.
yeah, obviously this isn't financial advice or anything, but yeah, if you are investing, make sure you diversify.
Of course,
you don't want to lose all your money. But I do hope you do get into investing sooner, because I think it's one of those things, as we're young, especially with the uncertainty, it's one of those things where I feel like you can gain a bit more clarity and certainty when it comes to planning your future and things like that. But I want to talk a bit about things maybe outside of what we're spoken about, outside of politics or business. Are you like a sporty person, or were you a sporty person?
That's a great question. I mean, as you know, we bumped into each other in the gym the other week. Always in the gym, 7 days a week. But I mean, apart from that, I'm big into cycling. So I cycle to university every day, which is, I know it's commuting, but if I weren't commuting, I'd still cycle all the time. I love cycling. Probably more of a mountain biker. So whenever I can, I go onto the various different trails around the country. There's a great one up in Yorkshire, really good one as well, just where my dad lives in Essex.
Yeah.
So I've just tried to get out there, and it's always great fun, because it's just, you've got a massive bike, you've got rocks, you've got uphills, downhills, tree roots, everything like that. And it's really so adrenaline fueled. It's so high pace. And I just love it. I've always done that since I was young. I think in terms of sports, I mean, mountain biking is a sport, of course, but in terms of more, I don't know, mainstream conventional sports, I think rugby was always my calling. I was pretty bad at football. I'm still pretty bad at football. I'm not really improved, but I was good at rugby. So I used to play for my school team long time ago, for many years, and I was pretty good. I wasn't the best, but I'd say I was up there. And I tried rugby when I came to Queen Mary, just did a few training sessions, but I just don't think it's for me anymore. I think it's a different league now. So back then, I had a growth spurt before everybody else. So I was the big guy, and it was really easy. I was fast, and I'd always get tries. We'd always win. Well, not always win, but we'd always do okay. But then coming to Queen Mary, where you're surrounded by people who have played for professional teams, they played in leagues, and you're thinking, I'm training alongside these guys, I'm just not on the same level anymore. So I think that was the thing. I love the sport still, and I watch rugby every now and then, but I think just that, it's a different ballpark.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a huge difference between being better than 99% of people. Because I think there are some things where I would consider myself better than 99% of people. And before, I used to think that was such a good thing. But what I didn't realize is that in that 1%, that's where it really gets serious. In that 1%, you know, you're probably at the bottom of the rung.
Absolutely.
In that 1% is where it gets really serious. Like the 99% are probably just, you know, casual, you know, they just don't care. But, you know, 1% is really where you really start to see the levels.
Definitely.
And that's in anything, in sports, in school, you know. Like I would consider, I've always been, you know, like an A student, you know, an academic person throughout high school and sixth form. And I think at uni I still do good as well, but I think the reason why I think it's only during maybe end of A levels towards uni where I've started to find school really difficult. It's because I think I've got into that 1% bracket where it's like, okay, now it's serious. Now you actually have to put in hours and hours and hours, and you have to figure out things to do. But as much as I would say I'm someone who has, done academically well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say school is for me. Like, would you say school is for you?
Great question. I think it's one of those things where for lots of people people just don't connect with it. For me, yeah, definitely. School was always for me. I grew up in a very academically focused household, and that I think again just really influenced the way I thought about the world. So yeah, I mean for me it was, if you get an A, you got to work out how to get the A star. If you get the A star, you have to try and get full marks. So it was always just pushing more. It's still the case now, and I think you touched on a really good point there that when I'm not saying I am, but when you're in that 1%, it just gets so much harder because it's one thing to get the C or get the B, but turning that into an A or an A star is just a different ballpark. So, but I think, it's always been something that I've worked very hard with. I put a huge amount of hours in still now with my degree. And I suppose similar to what you said, during A levels is when things really got difficult, because before that it wasn't too bad. I mean, I didn't even have to do my GCSEs because of the pandemic, but coming into the A levels, that was just a different game. And then now with a degree, because there's not so much support, it's more independent. Obviously, I don't know. I think I do more work now. I suppose the assistance is gone. You have to work things out for yourself. So, but I would say in general, always been a school kind of person.
Yeah. This period is exam period as well, leading up to exam period for not just us at university, but also GCSEs, A levels. Seeing as you're on the post end of that, is there any like advice you would want to give to your GCSE self or A level self?
Oh wow, it's a lot of advice that I do to myself. I think that it sounds really stupid, but the key thing is just work really hard. Because I mean the exams are daunting. There's no doubt. I mean when you're doing with your GCSEs, your A levels, you have 5, 9, 10 plus exams. You have lots of stuff to do, lots of stuff to learn. I think for the GCSE science exams, it's something like 700 pages of content. It's crazy you have to learn. And it is really daunting, but if you break all of that down across the year or a few years for your A levels, it's a lot of work, but when you break it down day by day, it's very, very manageable. If you just do a few hours a day from when you start in, say, year 12 or year 13, by the time you reach the exam, you know everything. And then it's just about doing well on the day, which is the crucial thing. And I think that would be the second piece of advice, which is if things maybe don't go quite to plan, just stay flexible. I mean, for me, my exam results were fine. I got the offer. I could accept my offer, but they weren't what I was predicted. They weren't what I was looking for. But the key thing is just be flexible, keep your head up, and remember that exam grade is not you. That's just, that's something you've done. It's not your whole life. And it's really hard in the moment when you open that piece of paper and you think, well, I could have done a bit better, or it didn't quite go to plan. But you just have to remember, look, that's something I did, but that isn't my personality. There's a lot more to me. So I think two things there. Just work really hard, because you only got one shot at these exams, and of course you can retake them as well, but really you've only got one shot. And then just make sure you stay flexible, because I'd imagine maybe 90% of the time things don't go well on the day. Or maybe not don't go well, but don't go exactly how you planned them on the day. You might get the wrong questions. You might just be having a bad day. That always happens. But just staying flexible and thinking, well, okay, I didn't maybe get into that university, or didn't get that job. I can try something else. I think that's the key.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always curveballs. I remember in my physics A levels, there was this one question. Oh my gosh. It was like a roller coaster question about circular motion, and just, those questions, you just look at it and you're like, you don't even know where to start. I think just consistency and preparation. But we're going on to the final stretch of the episode. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like. A quick fire question.
Okay.
You can't think too much about these. A few questions, get the people to know you a little bit more. So we've talked about politics and business. If you had to die on one hill, politics or business, which one are you picking?
Business.
Okay. If you had to call your parents right now and ask them to describe you in one word, what would they describe you as?
Hardworking.
Hardworking.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the one person who you think has inspired you the most in life?
That's such a hard question. I think my dad's really inspired me. Yeah, I think my dad.
Wow. And if you weren't conservative, who would you be?
I can't, for legal reasons, I don't think I can answer that question.
Are there any projects you have coming up that you want to let the people know to follow you on?
Yeah, I mean, I think just check me out on LinkedIn, just my full name. Anything that I think is good, I'm posting on there. Been doing a project with a local archive recently. We've been building a research guide for them. That's going to be, I'm making a post about that soon. So, yeah, I mean, if you're interested, just follow there. Anything I'm doing that I think is interesting, put it up on there. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, that has been this episode, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, and make sure you tune in for the next episode.
Next
like
on
those influencers,
the Jerry exclusive
all these crazy
podcast.
lifts and all the stuff to get views, but then you don't see it
Using fitness apps. What were your opinions on fitness apps?
straight away. There we go, perfect. See how hard you can get.
Thin ones. I know what very thin is. But I never make it past day 3. It feels like there is no mental bandwidth left. I'm not overweight, but I've lost muscle. My posture is trash, and I just feel sluggish, and I'm scared. I'm scared, man, that at 32, I'm already burning out my body before I've even lived properly.
Yeah.
But every time I think about starting, it feels too far gone. Like there's too much to fix. What would you suggest for someone like me?
I would definitely suggest